Another round of applause for the musicians, please. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center. Welcome to the Wanda Coleman Theater. My name is Quentin Ring. I am Beyond Baroque's Executive Director, and we're very excited to be here tonight to launch Cecilia Woloch's newest book, Labor, The Testimony of Ted Gall. We've got Harry Northup to read with her. We have some music for you, and we're just really thrilled to have you here. This was actually originally scheduled to be our very first program of the year. A couple of weeks ago. It was postponed due to the fires, and so everyone who was affected by the fires, you're still very much on our minds, and I think we're all just feeling a little something right now between that and the political situation. So I'm just very grateful to be with all of you tonight and to be able to listen to some poetry and some music. This book that we're going to hear Cecilia read from this evening is very much about justice. So I think it is worth starting by acknowledging our presence here on Tongva land and the wrong done to the Tongva people and indigenous peoples throughout North America through colonialism and the violent dispossession of their land. As an arts organization, Beyond Baroque is committed to uplifting indigenous writers and communities. To say a few words about Beyond Baroque itself, we are a space and a community dedicated to poets, writers, artists, and the imaginative possibilities of language. We have been here since 1968, making us 56 years old this year. Actually, that was from last year. 57 years old this year. It's a new year. We nurture the literary arts through a set of programs, including our Wednesday night poetry workshop, which has been running continuously since 1969. Harry was a member of that workshop going way back to the early 70s, I believe. A huge number of Los Angeles' better known poets and writers have gone through that workshop over the years. And we also have a reading performance series right here in this theater every week, usually several programs a week. We have an art gallery as well. We have a bookstore. We have an archive. And so we really appreciate everybody being involved with the space. We do have some really exciting programs coming up. Just on Saturday, we have kind of a triple header. We have the 10th anniversary reading for Gunpowder Press. It's a really wonderful press based in Santa Barbara. They'll be down here for that. Then just a little bit later in the afternoon, we'll have the opening for our newest show. Ansel Crute is the artist. The work is going in right now. You can see it, a little bit of a preview. The rest of the work upstairs isn't fully installed yet. And then on Saturday evening, just after the opening for the exhibit, we will also have a program on trans-border video art. Mexican and Chicanx video artists will be showing their work here in the theater. I think that day is a pretty good overview of all the different kinds of things we do here at Beyond Baroque. And so come back for that. Also, just check out our website or sign up for our newsletter to get more information about upcoming events. If you appreciate the show tonight or the work we do in general, and if you'd like to support the space, if you want to ensure that Los Angeles continues to have a home for poets and writers, please do consider becoming a member. You can also do it for more selfish reasons. We are charging for events starting again this year, as we used to do in the past before the pandemic. But if you become a member, you can get into our events for free. It costs as little as $60 if you're a senior or a student. $75 is a regular membership. $100 is a dual membership. You get a discount in our bookstore. You get a discount on our paid workshops. And also, if you become a member tonight, we are offering 2 premiums. We're offering The Writing Life, which is a book, sort of a collection of memories about Beyond Baroque and tips on becoming a writer from the community. It's a really wonderful book. A few of you are in it who are in the audience tonight. And we're also offering a book we put out, Song Again, by the late, great, and wonderful Peter J. Harris, which I should also mention was edited by Cecilia. It's a really brilliant book, and Peter passed away last year. So if you become a member, you can, at the individual level, you can get one of the books. If you come at the $100 level, you can get both. So thank you for your support, those of you who are members, and please do sign up if you're not. So that's all a long preamble before the main event, but I am really thrilled to be able to welcome Cecilia and Harry here tonight. I will introduce both of them, and they'll take it away. To tell you a little bit more about Cecilia, Cecilia Woloch is the recipient of fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Fulbright Foundation, and the author of 6 previous collections of poems: Sacrifice, a Book Sense 76 selection in 2001, Tsigan, the Gypsy poem, which has been given multidisciplinary presentations across the US and Europe, Late, for which she was named Georgia Author of the Year in Poetry in 2004, Narcissus, winner of the Tupelo Press Snowbound Prize in 2006, Carpathia, a finalist for the Milton Kessler Award in 2010, Earth, winner of the 2015 To Sylvia's Press Chapbook Prize, as well as a novel, Sur la Route, On the Road. She collaborates regularly with musicians, dancers, visual artists, and theater artists. Her work has been translated and published in French, German, Polish, Romanian, Bulgarian, Hungarian, Ukrainian, Hebrew, and Romanes. She's based in Los Angeles. She's one of our favorite people to host. Also introduce Harry Northup, an original member of the free Wednesday night poetry workshop, which, as I said, began here in early 1969. Northup's first featured reading was with Michael C. Ford at Beyond Baroque in 1974, and founding member of Coenga Press, a poets publishing cooperative. Northup has published 12 books of poetry, including Enough, The Great Running Chapel, and his most recent love poem to MPTF, member of the Academy of American Motion Picture Arts and Sciences since 1976. Northup made a living as an actor for 34 years, appearing in 37 films, including Martin Scorsese's first 6 movies, among them Mean Streets and Taxi Driver. He was the star of the acclaimed cult film Over the Edge, directed by Jonathan Kaplan, and Fighting Mad, written and directed by Jonathan Demme. Harry was married to the late Holly Prado, a wonderful poet, author, and teacher. Cecilia and Harry are really 2 of our very favorite people. They're legends at Beyond Baroque. So please, everybody, welcome Harry Northup to start us off. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Quentin. It's an honor to be part of this publication reading. Celia's a superlative poet, and my mom and dad were working class, and my heart is with the working class, and I believe in the unions too. I'm a member of 2 of them. So I'm going to read 3 of my poems. The images we possess kill the capturing. I know that sounds like an image trying to deny its own mother. She worked behind bars in a post office. This morning, after we took Dylan to school, we drove up the coast to Sunset. As short as the journey was, it was peaceful and warm. We sat in the car and watched 7 surfers, all of them wearing wetsuits. The second hot day in a row. Catalina could be seen from the coast highway. Only later did we notice the smog above the oil tanker in the southern end of the bay. As often as not, we talk about poetry and symbols and myths and how far is Mount Baldy. We see its caps, snowy. A squirrel was looking straight ahead, looking over the top of the cliff overlooking Sunset. A high amount of rocks and earth then pushed up, rocks below where many surfers have broken their teeth, at least one in the front. I honked, and in no time it was gone, turned and went back down to safety without taking time to think. Even in our own home, sometimes we talk low, sitting in front of the TV. Sometimes we sit looking at the TV with the TV off and talk to each other. Poetry is speaking and listening to one another. The mother I know, the one I had, was patient and loving and hard. I thought about. She had blue eyes. Where does the ocean get its color? From the wind it blows past. In the morning when it is cool, we talk to understand what it is that is sometimes blue and sometimes gray. And we drove to see how bad the damage had been. You have heard this before, and you will hear it again. I love my mother. Ocean, ocean. Jobs. You know, the lighting, I don't know if this light can come up a little bit here or not. If not, it's just a little hard. Jobs. Delivered the Rocky Mountain News, 21 daily, 95 Sunday, 8th grade. Delivered the Scottsbluff Star Herald, 8th grade. I lived in 2 different places during that year. Thin beets, picked tomatoes, laid on my back, put asbestos on pipes under hospital walkways, sew clothes at Dalton's men's shop, age 15, sew clothes at Greenlee's, age 16, worked as a secretary and DJ at KSID, United States Navy boot camp, 3 months, Imperial Beach, swept, swabbed, waxed, Buff Tunnel for 3 months, radio school 6 months, radioman station at Pearl Harbor and Waiwa 2 years, age 17 years, 10 months to 20 years, 11 months. Worked 3 days, mess duty, Treasure Island, age 18. Cafeteria worker, briefly, age 21. Briefly worked as a laborer on a grain elevator. Apprentice, summer stock, building flats, painting, gathering props, putting up and tearing down sets, acting, age 21. Messenger, Quicksilver Messenger Service, 41st Street off 5th Avenue, age 22. First job in New York City. Summer stock, age 22. Second year, Lake Whalen Playhouse, Fitchburg, Mass. Clerk typist, stock boy, men's suits, slacks, waiter, counterman, New York City, 1963, 1968. Worked longest at Simple Simon Hamburger Bar, 14th and 7th, 14th between 7th and 8th. 3 hours supper and all day Saturday, downtown waiter, Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, 8 p.m. to 1, 2 a.m., made $35 a night, lived at 25th and 10th, 3.5 rooms, 5-floor walk-up, $53 a month, 1 year. Played a mental patient in the movie Lilith, got my SAG card, 1962. Acted in Scorsese's Who's That Knocking at My Door, 1 day's work as an actor, my first real part in a movie, the first of 6 straight films I worked in for Scorsese. Worked as a waiter at the Friars Club, 55 East 55th for 3 months when I first got married. Waiter at Neil's, 63rd and 3rd. Day waiter at Maxwell's Plum. Night, I lived in New York City from 1963, 1968, and studied acting for 5 years with Frank Orsero. Married Rita Solomon, October 31, 1967, New York City. Moved to New York City, arrived March 5th, 1968. Got an apartment, 10th in California, Santa Monica, and got a waiter's job at the Old World restaurant on the Strip that day. Worked there 2 years. Played a prison guard in Judd for the Defense, my first TV job, age 28. In 1970, I got the part of Parker in The All-American Boy, worked 2 months in San Francisco and Vacaville, made enough money for myself, wife, and son to live on for a year. Worked in High Chaparral, 2 Alias Smith and Jones TV series. Worked as a janitor at Nyberg's, dry cleaners, late afternoons and Saturdays for a few months. Went to Santa Monica College and CSUN, got the GI Bill, late 60s, early 70s. Played Harvey Hall, deputy sheriff in Boxcar Bertha. Was Jerry Vietnam vet in Mean Streets, separated from Rita Northup, worked as a waiter on weekends for a few months at Pat Collins, a hip hypnotist on the Strip. Played Joe and Jim's bartender, and Alice doesn't live here anymore. Drove a cab for Santa Monica Red Top for 10 months, 74, 75 while going to college at CSUN, my last straight job. Got a part in Jaglam's Tracks in April 1975, quit driving a cab, played an FBI agent in Crazy Mama for the first of 9 acting jobs for Jonathan Demme, played doughboy and taxi driver for Scorsese in New York City, age 34, did 9 films in 2 years, continued to work as an actor in 38 films, 44 TV shows, 5 commercials through 2002. Last worked as an actor in February and March, played Supreme Court Justice Fitzsimmons in the ABC's The Court, co-starring, recurring role, acted in 5 out of 6 shows. Last Saturday night, I got $100 for reading my poetry at the Carnegie Art Museum, Oxnard, California. On October 11th, I got $200 to read my poetry at the Ojai Library. I have given many poetry readings over the years. I'm 62. When I hit 80, I began collecting my SAG pension. I continue to receive residuals. When I hit 65, I'll get Social Security. When I was young, I set pins in the SOD bowling alley, 6 cents a line. So my heart, as I said, is always worth the working class. The Door, this is my last poem of this section. The Door. Thank you, Muse, for all that you have given me, allowed me to say. For time I was lost driving cab, broken down beside a freeway. For youth I stole bullets, rifle, gun, gas, tape recorders, a loaf of bread. For acting I memorized, evoked memories and memories. For love I lost and found. For bones broken, cataloged, stored. Thank you, divine mystery, divine feminine, divine creative, for the silent and bowed figure before you, who does not hunger for money, for a big score, a new porch, who resides within a chandelier, who sees the sunlight on a white Buddha, who sees the brown Buddha and the orange cat Buddha. Thank you, Muse, for the woman sleeping in the bedroom, my wife, a poet. Bless you for all that you have given her, for me, for solitude and sunlight, for all connectedness with all mythic names remaining, recurring. We are all part of the same parasol, come out of the rack and spread, with light or shadows. Jung didn't have to tell me that. I see it in nature, and in nature I walk at night, stop before the divine feminine. Bless you, lady, for this breath. When I get home, I nail my hand to the door. When I want the door to open, I ask for grace, give thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry Northup. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Thank you, Beyond Baroque, from the bottom and the middle and the top of my heart. Is it too warm? Okay. We're good. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric, in the booth. And Suzanne Allen, who spent a tense hour trying to make the images she spent weeks putting together appear on the screen. Thank you, my dear friend Donald Noller, and my new friend Adam Berman for the music. You're going to hear more of that. I'm just rich in friends. Thank you all for being here. A lot of us are fighting despair, and it's my intention, it's our intention to lift that. And some of you came a very long way. Thank you, Corrine and Elizabeth, and those of you who really came from afar. I appreciate it. So this is Ted Gall at 14. Many of you know that I've spent a lot of time researching the life of my paternal grandmother, who was a radical. She was an immigrant. came to the U.S. as a teenager, illiterate, married, had been trafficked once already in the old country, married my father's father, who was shot in the street by a cop when he was trying to organize a strike, married a coal miner, and moved with him to a place called Russellton, Pennsylvania, coal mining town. That's where she met Ted Gall. So I was researching my grandmother's life, and I was trying to find out about this town where my father was born, and I had this idea that when the companies shut down the mines, these mining towns disappeared. And I couldn't find anything about this town until I stumbled across a book called Bucket of Blood, The Ragman's War. And this was a book by Suzanne Gall Sukol. I had to track her down. She wasn't real easy to find. She wrote under the name R.S. Sukol. Once I got to know her, I figured out why she made herself hard to find. But she, as soon as I found her and told her what I knew, she said, "I know my father knew your grandmother." I arranged to go and visit her in West Virginia, and her father had died a few years before, but she said his whole archive is downstairs in the basement, and she set me loose in this archive. Now, this was a man who dropped out of school at 12 years old to work in the mines. This archive is a work of art. It is so beautifully organized. And of course, Ted Gall got what education he did after 12 years old in the Little Red Schoolhouse. Who knows what the Little Red Schoolhouse was? Okay. So Ted Gall went to work in the mines. He went off to fight in World War I when he was 14, and came back and wanted to do anything but go back into the mine, but there was nothing else. He and his brothers all worked in the mines. A couple years after my dad was born, when he was living with his family in Russellton, the biggest coal mining strike in history erupted. Russellton was its center. This is a history that it's really difficult to find any information about. The town was surrounded by the private coal and iron police. It became a kind of armed camp. The miners and their families were thrown out of the company houses and were, during the coldest winter in history up to that point, were living in tents. Ted Gall and his brother built barracks for them to live in. The strike ultimately failed, but in the course of the strike, many people, like Ted Gall and my grandmother, became radicalized because the only people who could get in past the guards, past the guns, was the Communist Party USA. And they came in with aid and food and even Christmas gifts for the children. Another friend of mine in Warsaw, his father was one of those people who came in. So it's a really important, fascinating piece of American history that's been sort of swept under the rug. Ted Gall, like my grandmother, got involved with the CPUSA, which was a grassroots movement, had nothing to do at the beginning with the Soviet Union. The CPUSA, Communist Party USA, was deeply entwined with the civil rights movement. So later, when the CPUSA was infiltrated by what Ted Gall would call Stalinist types, he kept trying to leave. But he was a good friend of Paul Robeson. He'd taken classes with Langston Hughes, the poet Langston Hughes, with the great singer Marian Anderson at the Little Red Schoolhouse in New York. So he kept being drawn back in. Later, he was being hunted down by both the FBI and the KGB. And Suzanne's, during her childhood, they spent a lot of time hiding out at the old family farm in Russellton. And everyone in Russellton, Suzanne told me, covered for them. The postmistress said, no, they don't live here. We don't know anything about it. So until the danger had passed. So the words that you're going to hear tonight, they're not my words. They're Ted Gall's words. They're words that were taken from his letters, from a testimony, from the transcript of a recording about his life that he left for his daughter. About 10 years ago, I was trying to incorporate his testimony into my book about my grandmother, but it wouldn't work. So I just shaped them into lines and stanzas and made a poem and didn't know what to do with it until this wonderful publisher in Lexington, Kentucky, Accents, run by a woman named Katerina Stoikova, whose father was a coal miner in Bulgaria, said she loved it and she wanted to publish it. So that's what you're going to hear tonight. And you'll see some images of Ted Gall, one image of my father's family, his stepfather, his stepbrother, some other archival stuff of coal miners, and you'll hear some music. So that's what we have in store for you, and it'd be wonderful if you bought a copy of the book. And I'm going to start, and Harry is going to mostly give a voice to Ted Gall, and I just thought Harry's voice and his presence are kind of perfect for that. But I'm going to start us off by reading a poem for my grandmother. It's just a short prose poem. It's called In Which She Comes to America. So there you are, landed in the little boat of the only self you have, the only skirt, the only scarf, your hair in the long brown braid of the only girl you've ever been. Now, here comes the whistle's scream, the law's quick shove, the crowd of others pushing past with their cardboard suitcases, cloth sacks, their ragged bundles on their backs. When you step away from them, you stand in all that sharpened light, alone. Beneath your blouse, a little patch of herbs, dried flowers, earth of home, a little charm to keep you safe in this new country at your throat. Here comes the hunger. Here come the machines. Here comes the god of cash and sweat. Here comes the egg that turns to child inside your body. Here comes death. Here comes America, my love. All ship. There is no going back.
Young fellas, so great and so fine, and see not your fortunes way down in the mine. It'll form as a habit and seep in your soul till the blood in your veins runs as black as the coal. For it's dark as a dungeon and it's damp as the dew, where the dangers are double and the pleasures are few, where the rain never falls and the sun never shines. It's dark as a dungeon way down in the mine. Well, it's many a man that I've known in my day who's lived just to labor his whole life away, like a fiend with his dope and a drunkard his wine. A man will have lust for the lure of the mine, 'cause it's dark as a dungeon and it's damp as the dew, where the danger is double and the pleasures they're few, and the rain never falls and the sun never shines. It's dark as a dungeon way down in the mine. Well, I hope when I die and the ages shall roll, my body will blacken and turn into coal. As I look from the door of my heavenly home, I'll pity that miner that's digging my bones, 'cause it's dark as a dungeon and it's damp as the dew, where the danger is double and the pleasures are few, where the rain never falls and the sun never shines. It's dark as a dungeon way down in that mine.
That was really beautiful. One, mining days, 1918, 1920s. You had to load 20 ton out of there. That was for your shift. Then you had at least 5 ton of stuff that you threw away. That was no good. And maybe about 10 ton that you got paid for, if you were lucky. Then your 30 cents a ton made you $3.80 per day. And then you had to pay for rent on your lamp and buy your powder. Of course, you had a lot of work that was called dead work that you gave to them, putting up support poles, dynamiting, etc. That was for free. You only got paid for the tonnage that crossed the scales. There was usually had guys down there, they would cheat on the scales. You were lucky if you ended up with $1 a day. We got ventilation from fans on top of the entrance that would blow air down. You had 2 places. One was a hole where the men went down, and the other the hole where the coal came out. And usually the air went down the hole where the men went in, where the cages went up and down. You could always tell when the air wasn't circulating, because where the men were working, there was just a cloud of steam. If you had your car full loaded and you were waiting for the motorman to come and bring you an empty car and take your full car away, then you would have a sandwich or something. Then as soon as you got your car, you would hurry to get it loaded. The motorman comes and goes, and if you're not loaded, he'll go and leave you. And then you miss a trip. They had it all planned out. So they had just enough cars in there for you to load your cut out. After they had the machine coal taken out, then they had the pick men who would follow them where it was too dangerous anymore to go back in with the machines. Then the pick men would go in there and hit the face. If you just hit the face with your pick, the coal would just fly out because of the squeeze on it. Then you work like mad. When you're doing the pick work, you can hear the limestone cracking up there above you. Boundaries were set by the engineers. Lots of times, mistakes were made. For instance, a mine was worked out. It would gradually fill with water. Sometimes the weight of the water would just push that coal right out of there. Then you were in trouble. Most falls happen just snap, like that. The company, even if they knew they had a bad roof, wouldn't do anything about it until they had a fall. Then they only took care of the effects. Prevention, that was something else again. That they didn't do because that took money. Now in Rural Ridge, the town next to Russellton, going down toward the river by the turnpike, they had a fall. A man was caught under it, and they had mules in the mine to move the cars around. And a mule was caught in the fall too. There was a lot of screaming and commotion, and the men working in the other room heard it and came over to where the fall was. The boss, he was sitting on the mule's head to try to keep it from thrashing around. Now, the first man that got over there, the boss told him to sit on the mule's head and hold the mule's head down. This old Polish man said, "Shit on you. That man over there is under stuff." The Polish man was fired because he wanted to help the man under the fall instead of sitting on the mule's head. A mule costs money, and they could always hire another man.
All you good workers, good news to you. I'll tell about that good old union that's come with us to dwell. Which side are you on, boys? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Come and tell me, which side are you on? My daddy was a miner, and I'm a miner's son. And I'll stick with the union till every battle's won. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Come and tell me, which side are you on? They say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. You either are a union man or a thug for J.H. Blair. Which side are you on, boys? Which side are you on? Come and tell me, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Oh, workers, can you stand it? Oh, tell me how you can. Will you be a lousy scab, or will you take a stand? Which side are you on, boys? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Now, which side are you on? Don't scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us poor folk haven't got a chance unless we organize. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Come and tell me, which side are you on? Now, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Let me know, which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Two unions 1920s, 1930s. All the Gall boys worked in the mines. I went to work when I was 12 years old, driving the mules. That was 1918. There was a shortage of workers then because all the fellows were in the service. But as soon as the war was over and the older fellows returned, then the kids weren't wanted anymore. In Russellton, if you didn't have someone to get you into a mine or a job, then you had to go some relation, somewhere like Detroit. I didn't go to any relations. I went in the Army. I was 14. It was an escape. It was a way out, because otherwise, there was nothing. There was nothing there. After a year in the Army and 4 years in the Marines, I came back to Russellton and went to work in the mines. We had to strike for better conditions. We had to strike every step of the way. John L. Lewis and those guys got big names. But any progress that was made over them and in spite of them. They were getting good wages. They were getting good salaries from the dues that were paid by the miners. They didn't want that disrupted. They had a working agreement with the coal companies, and everything went along real fine for them. If you wanted any progress at all, it was only through wildcat strikes. During the 27 strike, when people were being evicted out of their houses, my brother Irvin was building barracks for the evicted people to live in. The company didn't like it. The company owned the houses, so they could evict people if they didn't work. They wanted workers to have no place to go. They wanted them to have nothing, so they would just acquiesce. Because of the strike, I got away from the mines, and it wasn't until November 1928 that I went back. I guess I was desperate. You just couldn't get a job. I had been really sick with the flu on February 28, when we were all really sick with it, and Irvin died from it. And then Roosevelt came in. And then you were allowed to organize for unions again. But the company had people who would tell the bosses what was going on. They masterminded a fellow to work with me. He was telling the company everywhere I went, and almost my thoughts. The coal and iron police, they controlled all the roads around the coal camps. I went into Butler Company to organize them. I didn't even have one contact to talk to. I would go and wait alongside the road when the people came out from work. I would walk alongside them and talk to them as they were walking home. They were frightened. They were afraid to talk to anyone for fear that someone would report them to the company. At Russellton, after we had reorganized there and had a semblance of a union, we had no way of collecting dues and had no contact with the company. Everything was more or less free will. Good fellows, strong fellows, mentally, morally, every way strong fellows, but they were frightened. We had to collect dues out on the road, on the public road. They would drop their dues money on the ground. and then walk across the road to the other side so they wouldn't even be seen talking to us. But we succeeded. We succeeded.
Three, God. In the days when they were first starting to build unions, and a child sees their dad just trying to be a free-spoken person, and he was fired out of this mine and fired out of that mine, and you move from one community to another until you get another job again, and that kid grows up in that environment, seeing all those things that go on. He sees the management as they go to church in these nice white wagons and sit in the front row. Poor old Charlie Knocker, he goes and he has to sit in the back row. The kid sees this, and it makes him angry at the whole system. He sees religion as something used to keep people in subjection. He sees that there is no truth there, no honesty. So he says, to hell with the whole thing. Righteous people looking at that kid will say he's going to hell. But God will give that kid a chance. My brother Paul was raised during a time when the mine was new. He went to work during a time when people were coming from Europe. The company would send recruiters over to Europe, usually someone who could speak the language. The company would pay his way back to his country to recruit men. They were paid by the head, so they often didn't recruit the most stable of men. They would go to the saloons and find enough men to fill a crew to bring over. Those recruits were not the best citizens of this country. So Paul was raised among those. When he first went to work in the mines, there were things that happened to Paul, too, during that time that corrupted him. He never had a chance at coming at God's truth. When our little daughter died, she was an innocent. Who was anyone to judge if my little girl would go to heaven? A lot of truths about God only started coming through to me at that time.
There's a land that is fairer than day, and by faith we can see it afar. For the Spirit waits over the way to prepare us a dwelling place there in the sweet by and by. We shall meet on that beautiful shore in the sweet by and by. We shall meet on that beautiful shore. We shall sing on that beautiful shore the melodious song of the blessed, and our spirit shall sorrow no more. Not a sigh for the blessing of rest in the sweet by and by. We shall meet on that beautiful shore. Sing along. In the sweet by and by. We shall meet on that beautiful shore. In the sweet by and by. We shall meet on that beautiful shore. In the sweet by and by. We shall meet on that beautiful shore.
That's beautiful. I know Ted Gall is with us tonight. 4 New York days, 1930s, 1940s. In my life, I've always wondered why. Why was I exposed to this or that or the other experience? Why, just when I seemed to have it made in a particular area, with that door closed and the new one open in an entirely different field? Why did I find myself involved in something that was not of my own making, but seemingly had no beginning and seemingly will have no end? Would it interest you to know that Langston Hughes once instructed a class in a labor school of which I was a member? If you know Langston Hughes, you have my permission to check with him as to whether this story is so. I would ask about it low key, because he may not want it generally to be known that he once instructed a class that was under communist jurisdiction. But then again, he might not mind at all. The intent of his poems was to make people aware that the world is not free. Even though on the surface, the slaves have been freed, underneath the struggle goes on of one class attempting to dominate the other by subterfuge, by terror, or by open, brutal force of arms. All this to keep the working class, the producers, the ants of the human world in their place. How beautifully he brings this out in his poem about Spain during the Revolution. In 1937, there were many volunteers who went to Spain to fight the fascists, who joined the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, who came from the ranks of labor in the Pittsburgh district, 6 from the Russellton, Curtisville Valley. 2 of them returned, but 4 of them died. I was the district secretary of the International Workers' Order. As the district secretary, I was instrumental in raising the money to purchase 3 ambulances for the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, and enough money to furnish the ambulances with surgical instruments and supplies. The International Workers' Order was the insurance wing of the militant labor movement. In 1938, the IWO ran a school for district class members to learn about mortality tables and other actuarial tables. The school was held in New York City in the old Broadway Hotel. One of our instructors was the author of a book, Investing in Disaster. The disaster part entered in when the insurance companies devised a scheme to combine insurance with savings, in which actually a person became his own insurer. But the worst part was that the insurance companies became bankers. The insurance companies had millions of dollars of other people's money to invest. The insurance companies' money was invested in the companies that were the most brutal in their suppression of labor and legal and illegal interference to any attempt of labor to organize. I was not convinced that the insurance companies were a boon to policyholders or to the general public because they invested in industry. That was why the IWO was organized, to give the poor good insurance at a rate they could afford, where they were given an opportunity to express their frustration. The class was instructed to give an analytical report. I made the report. I'm not sure if Mr. Hughes was there in the audience. I'm assuming that he was, because the next day, a black man sat with me for a while, gave me a package, and left. In the package was Langston Hughes' book of poems. After one class, a very kindly black woman questioned me about my background, company camps, company money, coal and iron police. my parents' background, and far back into history. Before the day was over, a letter was given to me. It read, quote, "The only position or opinion of any value is one you will die for. Hang in there and don't cave in." Signed, Paul Robeson. The next day, this beautiful, very kindly woman spoke to our class. She spoke softly about the feelings of those looked down upon and discriminated against through no fault of their own. They had to do one of two things: cave in and become cowering Uncle Toms, or they rose to their full height of dignity, lifting their voices like trumpets to point to the sins of the oppressors, even if they had to die for it. I sat there in tears, unable to even stand as she left. One of my classmates, a girl from Wheeling, West Virginia, said, "Wasn't she wonderful?" Especially when she said, "Never bow down to the people who have the stench of the slave market on their clothes, regardless of their words." Then she told me that the woman was Marian Anderson. That has been 42 years ago. At graduation, 6 places were named. I didn't get any of them, but I did get a mention. It said, "Mr. Gall is the one most likely to succeed." Of course, it's still not too late for that. I see that the roughest days of my life and of all those now living are just ahead.
Originally wrote this in 2018 and called it Prayer for 2018. It's also a prayer for 2025, in the name of whatever country this is. Surely there was a river once, but there is no river here. Only a sound of drowning in the dark between the trees, the sound of wet, and only that. Surely there was a country that I called my country once, before the thief who would be king made other countries of us all, before the bright screens everywhere in which another country lives. But what is it anyway to live, to breathe, to love, to eat? Surely there was a real earth, wild and green here, blossoming, land of windswept plains and blood, then of shackles and of iron, and then the black smoke of its cities and the laying down of laws, under which some flourished, if you call that flourishing, and from which others would have fled had there been anywhere to run. My country, which is cruel and which is beautiful and lost. Surely there were notes that made a song, a pledge of birds, and not a child in any cage, no man or woman in a ditch. Surely what we meant was to anoint some other god, one made of wind and starlight, pulsing, heart that matched the human heart.
Surely that God watches us now, one eye on the river, one eye where the river was.
So this last song that we're going to sing, I'm going to invite you all to sing along with it. You may probably know it. It's a song a lot of us learned back in grade school. It's called This Land Is Your Land. And it was written by Woody Guthrie. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Woody Guthrie, he was a songwriter, rambler, rabble-rouser, community organizer, and he came out of the time of the Depression and the Dust Bowl, and that was a time when there was lots of homelessness, lots of unemployment, and lots of people on the road, lots of migrants traveling around looking for work, and the power structure in the country was not happy about that, and they were telling people there was no place for them. That sound a little familiar? And people were being heard, there was no place for them. And so Woody wrote this song in response to remind us just who does this land belong to. So please join and sing. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island. From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that friendless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. I roamed and rambled, and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of a diamond desert. And all around me, a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. There was a big sign on that tried to stop me. A sign was painted, private property, but on the back side, it didn't say nothing. That side was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island. This land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me.
So this power that we remember. And poetry and music, my friend, that will. So I'd like you to have some wine and some crackers, cookies, buy some books, because that helps poets and that helps beyond Baroque. And it's wonderful to have books. I'm clearing space to have my apartment painted with thousands of books. So I have to move from one room to the other so they can paint.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.